Guys, welcome back. We're here with Tracy again, and we so loved you sharing your story last time. I feel honored to get to know you a little bit better, and we're just so grateful for you to be here. But today we're going to talk about grief and kind of like dealing with kids through divorce. And so, I guess let's get started.
Yeah, and we know Tracy because she is a child therapist. She's my kids' therapist, and I think you're so good at what you do. I love that, seeing when people are really good at something, and you're very good at just working with kids and helping them walk through traumas and grief. And I know you've been like really transformational in my kid's life. So first of all, I guess just how did you get into that field? Did you always know you want to work with kids in that capacity? Like, how did you start working with kids in counseling?
Okay. So I was working for 18 years in the school board, and we were getting away from doing the one-on-one counseling in the schools and going into the classrooms and doing teaching. And I didn't have a background in teaching, but but that was a growing experience that I learned a lot from. But I really felt that God was calling me to step out of that boat and to actually try and do this full time. Well, when I say full time, this is my semi-retirement plan, where I'm working like 3 days a week. But being able to do it from my home office, which is separate from my home, but it's been amazing rather than being all over the Niagara region. Yeah.
And what do you think, so when kids are going through any kind of trauma, like divorce, last week we talked about loss, anything, what do you think are important, the key important things that kids struggle with and that need to be kind of walked through in order to come out the other side in a healthy way?
Yeah, it's really good.
Well, I really think it's important that first you equip yourself as the parent, right? Because I think of backing up to that point. Like when you're on the plane and they tell you to put your mask on first.
Right.
It very much works the same way.
Right.
So you need to figure out how to take care of yourself, and that whether or not you're going to see a therapist, right? That you have a good support system around you, because that is going to directly affect your kids' grief. But then trying to create, allowing your kids the opportunity to come and share with you that it's okay to cry even when you have your tears, to not fully hide that from the kids, but create an environment where they can talk, and that it's safe to talk about that kind of thing. Good. And then finding a place where your kids can find a therapist type of thing, someone to talk to, so that as parents, we try our best. We really try our best. But sometimes there are things that they are afraid to share with you because it might hurt you. And I would say in a lot of cases like grief and divorce, those are massive things that a kid goes through that, as we know as an adult, we need help with. And so of course your kids and their feelings, even though you think that things look well, you should make sure that they are doing well and they're learning. I think it's really important that kids learn about their feelings. And that's kind of like a basis line, right? Where they're teaching them that self-regulation piece to understand where they feel it in their body and how do they calm themselves down, right? And that's a coping skill that they need for life.
I feel like I really realized for a lot of reasons that my kids probably needed therapy, but I remember one day my daughter had come home from school and she had some really close girlfriends, but she was in grade 4 or 5 at that time, and she was kind of upset. She said, "Mommy, something had happened that had upset her about the divorce." And she said, "Mommy, I went to talk to these 2 friends I have and tell them I was so upset." And she said, they both just looked at me and didn't say anything. And she was like, "I felt embarrassed and I felt so hurt." And then I realized, you're like, because even as adult women, a lot of times at least we have other friends who we can talk to, and they might not give like professional advice, but they'll encourage you or sympathize or whatever. But a child doesn't know how to deal with another child's hurt or grief. And these were like her good friends, and they're such good girls, but I think they probably were just shell-shocked and they didn't even know how to process what they were told, didn't know how to help her. I ended up having to call the moms and being like, hey, just want you to know that my daughter shared this. I hope that's okay. And they were both really great. But then I realized like my daughter's going to need more because she doesn't even have friendships because they're like 11, 12, right? Like who's going to help her when she wants to get that off her chest, right? And like how we all do, you go through something, you call a friend, you call your sibling, you call whoever, but little kids don't even have
understand
that,
it.
right?
So you need a trusted adult to talk through those things. You absolutely do, because kids are, they don't have the maturity. They don't have the experience in a lot of cases to know. But even if they have the experience, they might have had a really negative experience. And so they don't have the depth of understanding of what's going on, especially with young kids. And so having that outside person that they feel is a safe place to share things that they maybe are worried about upsetting mom, and they can have that place to share it, or dad, or whatever. But even it doesn't even have to be like a weekly thing, or it really depends on the needs of the children. But I strongly feel that it's safeguarding. It's putting that down there to make sure this is a person that even if you feel you don't need it now, this is a person we can reach out to, that you've already had the introduction and you feel safe with. But I would say don't go once, like go 3 times.
See if the fit is good. And what age do you recommend? Like, is it like, when would you start therapy for a child?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because I always thought school-age kids, and I was working with school-age kids to begin with, and I had worked with kindergarten kids as well in the school system. But I'm realizing more and more how the building blocks of the self-regulation can come earlier, can come at 2.5 and 3.
Wow.
Where we can be teaching them simply about their emotions, where they feel in their body, and how to respond.
Wow.
And so they're often in a state of confusion of what's going on. So, and then being able to have the words for how to respond to how they're feeling, right? Because sometimes they don't have the words. And I've noticed that like 3-year-olds often don't understand the difference between feeling scared and mad, right? And so it's learning those emotions.
I don't think I know the difference between feeling scared and mad.
I feel mad when I'm scared.
Yes, I feel scared when I'm mad. I'm like that's they call it the secondary emotion, right? Like anger is never the first one. So maybe I should have started therapy at 3 years old.
But then you have to give them the language for what they're feeling, and then how do they calm themselves down, right? And I think that's like one of the biggest things we can teach our kids, tool for life, right? So that you don't get into addictions or other things.
I need to know
right?
sometimes how to share my feelings and calm myself down.
Well, it's self-regulation. Teaching them
Self-regulation is, I really feel that's a baseline. That's where I always start with kids, where they need to figure out how well do they know their feelings, and where are they feeling in their body, and how do they calm down. Before we can go on to other things, that's where we need to begin.
I know. Oh, do you want to
go ahead?
Oh, okay. Sorry, we have all the questions for you.
Go right ahead.
Go. And we're going off the cuff here. We had papers, but they've gone out the window.
Might not have all the answers, but I'll do my best.
That's okay. So in terms of like divorce, because a lot of our viewers, obviously, this was never intended to be a divorce podcast, but a lot of our viewers and listeners have walked this road or are walking this road. And I guess like the question would be, you know, you've probably worked with a lot of kids for different reasons of grief or whatever, but what would you say is like, what part of divorce is like detrimental for kids? And like if the spouse, I guess like if they both decided to end the marriage, or if one decided to end the marriage, or like how can you help your kids navigate?
Well, it's very important that you don't blame the other spouse.
Yes.
Even if there is blame
Right.
there, that you really keep it about very simple for the kids, because you do not want to tarnish that relationship.
Yeah.
So regardless, you have to separate your feelings and don't share your feelings.
Yeah.
Right? Don't explode about how you feel about
Yes.
the parent, just keep that very, very positive.
Right.
And don't ask them to ask questions on your behalf.
Yeah.
Right? Very, very important. It is amazing if both parties can actually be friendly. I don't mean friends, but friendly, and have a good working relationship. I've actually seen it where some have parted ways and actually, have dinner once a week, but that's not like that's the I know.
No, thank you.
But then I've noticed too, like when other people enter the scene and that, then
Put
a lot of that changes.
in the dinners. Yeah, I feel a little tempting.
Yeah.
But I think it also, correct me if I'm wrong, could be like, maybe that works more depending on how the marriage ended.
Right.
Maybe
that is extremely rare.
Yes.
Extremely rare. But if the conflict can be kept away from the kids,
of
it's
course.
a huge gift.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you work as a team and you're not fighting over, like, is he playing this sport or that sport?
Right.
Or, if you're really listening to your kids.
Yeah.
And really putting what's best for them. Like,
Yes. It's also really important that a new partner doesn't enter the scene too quickly.
Right.
Because then the child doesn't know where they belong.
Right.
And I think one of the most important gifts you can give your kids is, when this happens, is that you focus on them, the one parent, and the other parent focuses on them.
Yeah.
So
and not
that
rush into relationships.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to know where they fit in that.
Yeah. That's really good.
It's also like, it's not good if the relationship is about ended because of another person as well too, because those children will have great difficulty not blaming that other person for the reason.
Yeah.
If it happens later, it's not the blame.
Right.
It feels like it's unrelated to the child.
It feels
Yeah.
unrelated, but it's very hard to rescue that relationship from that.
Yeah.
So, so it's really important that the child knows that relationship's important to them. And even when they start dating, it's important that time doesn't get shared.
Yeah.
Right, because probably kids, even, we talked about this a couple episodes ago, even if they might not want to upset the parent and they'll go along with it, deep down, like, kids don't want to share their parent with, like, who to them is a stranger.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to get married or something, it's really serious.
Yes.
But if you're just dating, it's like,
You should
why? Kids don't
introduce
want
the
that,
kids,
probably,
yeah.
right? They're probably like, oh.
I think it's really important that you don't introduce till you know that this is a person you want to spend your life with.
Yeah.
Right.
Because there's a
great
lot
advice.
of hurts that involve.
Well, because then if the kids even do develop a good relationship and they get
Then it's
attached,
another loss.
Somebody
it's
breaks
another
up
loss. Yeah,
and-
that's
It's
true.
another loss, and so that becomes very, very challenging, and you just want to protect them as much as you can.
Yeah.
But for kids to know that, because a lot of the times kids will feel like, oh, I've been bad, and that's why mom and dad split up. It's really important messaging that it's nothing
do
that
with
you've
the
done.
kids, yeah.
And a lot of times the language I would suggest to parents is, we've forgotten how to be friends.
Yeah.
Right? Just as simple as that, and
Yeah.
not as complicated. And so we feel it's best.
Yeah.
You don't share a lot of details that are not age appropriate.
Now, that was my next question, actually. As I recently listened to a podcast where, the husband was unfaithful to the wife, but they stayed together. And so they have other friends that have stayed together, but their kids, like, at what age is it appropriate to, like, give kids, like, if they start asking questions? So in this podcast, the kids got to about 15 to 17, and they started asking questions like, what happened? This is what I heard, or, and then the counselor on this specific podcast said, it is not your job to protect the parent that had the that did the betraying. It is their job to fix that relationship with your child if damage control comes. But, like, at what age would you recommend telling the truth, and is it worth,
It depends on the child, because a child at a certain age can be mature or not.
Yeah.
It can be more immature.
That's true.
So it's really important that blame is never a part of it. But if they start asking direct questions, and as they get older, like you say, becoming an adult, and you shouldn't lie,
Right.
but you also shouldn't share a lot of it,
Yeah.
Dump on your kids your frustrations. Or,
and then share the whole story, right? You really want to be about encouraging the relationship with the spouse, if it's a healthy one, right? Because if you start actually bad mouthing your spouse, you're only hurting your child.
Because they're half them and half you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So really important that you protect that. But again, you're talking 17, 18, they're asking you these tough questions. You can't lie, but don't expand. Don't tell them
They don't need to know
the
all the
nitty-gritty
details.
details. Encourage them to ask the other parent, right?
Yeah.
To share and say, I pushed mom, I've asked her this, and I need you to tell me what happened. But again, they don't have to share all the details as well too. But I think it's great if parents are honest at that point, that when a child asks, I wouldn't share unless they ask.
Yeah.
Because truth, they will be looking for who's telling me the truth.
Yeah.
Right? If you lie to me, well, what else have you lied about?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's such a
So
big
that's
thing.
really important. And even all the way along, you don't want to lie, but you could say that you're not ready to talk about those things. There's something that dad did has really hurt me and our marriage. You don't have to share the details.
The details, I know in my case, my kids, given who she was, they would see pictures. They would see our wedding photos. They would see everything. And so back then their therapist had said, just kind of say to them that, this girl did something to hurt mom's feelings, and that's why we're not friends anymore. Yes. And so that was kind of the story for the longest time.
Yes.
Until, my daughter's 13 now, my son's about to be 15, and then they started asking the questions, right? But
they put the things together. You don't have to draw the lines attaching it at all.
Yeah. And it's just, I guess, working through that with them and telling them, and if there's damage done from the other side, it's their responsibility to, we can't play damage control for what happens on the other side, kind of.
Right.
And I know that in the last episode, Pam and I spoke about, kind of, we hate the saying. Well, if you watch Tracy love the saying, and we're gonna be shoot. But how, when somebody goes through a divorce, it's always well, kids are resilient, and Pam's I hate that. She's kids are resourceful. As a therapist, what would be are kids really resilient, or do you think that they just kind of figure it out? And how damaging can a divorce be? If there's somebody out there watching that is on the brink of a divorce but is still willing to work on their marriage, what can we say to them to be no, the damage that a divorce, that work on it, what?
It's very damaging and long term. Right. You are you're not just affecting the two of you, it spirals out. It's not even just your kids and your family unit, it's bigger, right?
Yeah.
And we know that even in the church community, it affects masses, right? So absolutely, if you're still thinking of working on it, work on it, because the devastation is real and it's not short term.
Yeah.
That's the thing I think is difficult, that I think therapy for kids can be helpful. And I think you touched on the same thought with even grief with your, when someone passes away and you were saying initially there's all this support and then you kind of feel forgotten and people move on. Same with a divorce for kids. I feel especially if you have a higher conflict parent or two high conflict parents, the divorce is just one. It's not there's all this healing happening even for the children. They're getting re-wounded over and over by all these specific things. Yeah. And so people might think, oh, their parents got divorced 2-3 years ago, they're fine.
No,
but your kid needs more support throughout, right?
In my experience, especially when it's high conflict, it's ongoing, right? So
like
it's
the
not
divorce
the
is
one
almost
event.
the least of your worries, right?
Yeah, it's
like
what keeps happening, and the child keeps being re-injured by what's happening between the parents and acting out with them. So it's been extremely damaging, and absolutely, it's not a short-term thing. Yeah. Can kids be resilient? Yeah, but they shouldn't have to be in the sense. But it's not always the case, right? Like you can't predict that.
Yeah.
Can they bounce back when given the right tools?
Yes.
Right?
And different kids are different.
Yeah, that I always find so weird. I even know adults like our age, or even maybe like, never mind. But I know adults. I'm going to skip that thought. No, I'm saying I know adults. I was going to specifically name an instance, and then I thought, let's not do that.
Okay.
But so where it's like, I know people that have gone through like some hardships in their life, maybe, right? Who are my age, and they are like almost like damaged from it. Like, it's they make all these bad choices. Maybe they get into addiction, or they get into abusive patterns because of something. Then I know other people who maybe by all accounts would have experienced something far more traumatizing, and yet they have used that. They're successful, they're great people, it's almost like pushed them to be better. And I'm always so curious about, how does that happen? Is it just like our own personalities? Is it early intervention? Like, how come some people experience something and it literally cripples them for life, and then other people experience things way worse and they go on to live this productive, amazing, restored life as an adult? Is that something that we can help like our kids avoid, or what do you think about? I've always been so curious about that. I think it's fascinating. Or people are just different, or what?
Well, I think it goes back to self-regulation too, and teaching those tools, right? About you're equipping them for life, not for the 6-year-old child. This is not the tools for now. The breathing might look a little different at 6 when you're doing like, I don't know, volcano breathing. Yes. It might look very different as an adult, but very, very similar what you're doing. You're learning where you're feeling it in your body and how to calm down. So those tools that you're developing, if you're working on them and refining them, then you're equipping yourselves. Faith can be a huge component, huge component with that. But there are others that reach out and their strategy is one that is harming and hurtful and addictions, and because they've never learned those strategies. So they are not going to be resilient. But that's not to say that you could have someone that has really good tools, but then they also have a life that has a lot of challenges and a lot of things, and they may have done some really good work in counseling, but that doesn't mean later on that something else happens and you know what, they need to come back and brush up a bit and remember those tools again so that they can get out again, really important. So you don't necessarily just do it now and then you're done. You know, it's like you may need to revisit. Therapy's not. I don't mean that therapy's meant for life. What I mean is there may be times that you have to go back to brush up on things, so that you're equipped to go out again.
Or I think there's different seasons, right, where you might feel
different challenges.
Yeah, like I'm okay for years and years. Like I stopped going to counseling for years, and then just recently, in the last year, I was like, oh no, it's
something's popping up.
It's time to go back, right? So I think that even giving ourselves the grace to be like, because I think sometimes we touched about this in the last episode too. People are like, oh well, like you were divorced like 12 years ago, or you're divorced 8 years ago. Like, are you not over it? And it's like,
that's like grief. Are you not over it?
You've
learned how to live with it. Right.
And especially for children, I think the hurt keeps coming. Like when there's they experience something, or maybe they do something well and only one parent's there, and then they feel the grief of like, well, my other parent's there, it's not my weekend, and those little things are constantly happening to kids over and over and over. So there's an ongoing hurt. It's not just like, oh, your parents got divorced 5 years ago, or like your parents remarried and you should be fine. I think that sometimes people aren't realistic about what the long-term effects are on children.
Oh, absolutely. And it can affect the relationships that they choose, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what they've learned as normal, right? So it's really, really important.
Yeah.
And it's like a rewounding, right? It's like, I feel like in my situation where they go back and forth, you know, I feel like there's that rewounding of like, they might not say it, but you know, it's like an open wound, and then the Band-Aid gets ripped off, and then you come back or whatever. It's like for anybody to have to go like back and forth or have two homes or whatever.
Yeah.
It was never the way this was like that God intended it to be.
Yeah.
So there's some brokenness in that.
Yeah.
And how do you navigate it with your kids? Because even for them, like my kids don't know the difference.
Yeah.
They don't remember the difference, but yet still there's always a bit of an aching. Though bedtime it'll come out, or when we're driving the car, oh mom, well, I wish this, or how come this happened? And so it's like navigating them in the right steps so that it doesn't damage their next relationships.
Well, sometimes parents will say, oh, they said this, and I don't know what to say. Can you help me with how to navigate this down the line? And absolutely, we can work on that together.
Yeah.
But there are different things that continue to happen, and it doesn't mean that the same tool applies to everything, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
and
that's
it's being able to talk through that with someone that is not attached to the situation sometimes is helpful. Sometimes they just need to let off some steam about the frustration of that, because maybe they don't want to share with mom or dad because it'll be hurtful. If maybe they're in that protective mode, who knows? But having someone that's maybe been reintroduced early, then if it's been a healthy therapist that they feel that connection with, then it's much easier to step in down the line saying, you know, I need to come for a couple of weeks because I'm struggling with this.
Yeah.
You know, not a big deal. And much easier in therapy when there's already been the relationship.
Yeah, and you know the story. Well, I was saying that in a couple of episodes ago, that now my kids have, I mean, you've done such a good job with them. They don't need it as frequently, but there were times where something would happen and they would just be like, call Tracy. We need to call Tracy. And I'm like, okay. Like they would just know when something happened that they weren't sure how to walk through. They just knew, we're calling Tracy. We need to go see Tracy. And I'm like, no problem. I'd email you or set up an appointment. And I just thought like how beautiful that was actually, that they just like knew that they had somebody who they could sit with and be like, okay, this is what happened. What do you think? And then you can be like, well, what if you tried this? Or what if you considered that? And then they always would come back with like a new perspective. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Like, so yeah, I think it's, and you never know like how kids are really processing things. Like, I don't know, you just said like I remember, you think that kids you're shielding them and you're doing this like good job of like, they don't even know. Like so many times I've thought that, and then the kids say something, you're like, darn it. Like I remember
they were listening.
They were
listening to your shot.
Like, they're
Very
perceptive
smart.
and they're picking up things. And especially both of my kids are like very in tune with things, almost like in a great way. But sometimes I'm like, oh, it's so hard to keep anything, especially like my oldest Naya, right? Even when she was like 2, she acted like she was like 20. She's always been very mature. But I remember when when their dad first left, and you know, people like handle things differently. And there were some friends who were so great and they were just swooped right in and were so supportive. And then I remember one specific couple that we were quite close to, that we would spend a lot of time with, and we'd hang out with them and we'd vacation with them. And it was sort of like when he left, that relationship stopped. Like I think they just maybe couldn't handle it. And so there was no more like invites. It was very kind of abrupt. And, you know, they had some kids that my kids were friends with. And just one day out of the blue, I remember driving and Naya just popped up from the back seat and she said, and she must have been thinking about it. She just said, you know, she named the couple and she said, how come we don't go to their house anymore? And I was like, I was stammering and stammering. And then she said, is it because we're not a real family anymore? And I was like, and partly I wanted to almost be like, well, Yeah. Because honestly, I do think they were uncomfortable with the dynamic. But of course, I would never say that to her. And I rambled on something, but friendships change and it's okay.
Yeah.
Some sort of thing. But I remember thinking, I had those thoughts. I had been feeling hurt that this couple kind of just disappeared from my life anyways. Like I didn't really, anyways. But I didn't think the kids noticed it.
Yeah.
Right.
And then to hear her, I was like, wow, this is so interesting that
She did
she noticed it. And she's like 11 or whatever. And she was
very
noticing
receptive.
that, right? And then the way she's interpreting it and thinking like those are important things to walk through, because that's her like communicating another scenario of like feeling rejection or feeling like now she's less than, because the way she worded it, we're not a real family. And you know, I just think those are the types of stuff that go on in kids' minds, like well after the divorce, that you gotta like deal with those as they come, right?
Those are secondary losses that come from the initial loss, but those are hard to navigate because, as you say, they're hard to navigate as an adult. So why do we expect that our kids just have all the answers?
Yeah.
They don't.
don't.
If we don't, how do they?
Yeah.
What would you say, and you don't need to answer this if whatever, but what would you say to a kid that comes, actually I have like a 3-point question here, but we'll see. But what would you say to like a kid that comes in and is like, my parents are split, but my dad or my mom is saying, oh, it wasn't you, like I didn't leave you, I left your mom. Because I feel like that is something repetitive that we're hearing. I'm walking a girlfriend through, actually 2 girlfriends through this right now, and both spouses had affairs, and both of them are, they keep saying, oh yeah, well I didn't leave you, I'm not leaving you, I'm leaving your mom. But like you're a package deal, and so I just want to know, what are your thoughts on that? And then I'll have another question in a minute.
Well, I understand the thought behind it, but the fact is they've left the home, right?
So to a child.
But to a child, our family unit is different, right? I now see you, and there's a few of us this way, and a few of us, we're scattered, right? Yeah. So it does feel like a loss. So I know why they're trying to say that, because it's like this divorce is not because of the way I feel about you. Right. It's the way that your mom and I have gone our separate ways. And they're trying to share that with the child. Yeah. But the child still feels it that way. Right. So you don't want to discount how the child feels, right? Yeah. So
because mom or dad doesn't live there anymore. Like, right? Like it's not, like in my situation, my husband now, his ex-wife had an affair and left, and he was left with all 4 kids. And something she always said, same thing, was like, oh, I didn't leave the children, I left you, and like different things like that. But for a child, they feel like, well,
you actually left. You physically left, so you left me. That's how they feel. Yeah.
It is the way they felt. So you can't tell them you didn't feel that way.
From my experience, it's fascinating the complex things that they think a child will understand. Like they have all these very complicated, complex reasons why they cheated, why they were abusive, why they they left, and whatever it is. And then if they think the child will understand, if they're like, wow, it was just this and this and that, and maybe because I've worked with kids too for 20 plus years, like I'm sometimes when I hear even other people's stories, I'm thinking, a child is not grasping all that. They do not understand this complex web that you've weaved to justify the hurt you brought in the family. And you're just lying to yourself by thinking that you can explain this to a child and then having the expectation that they're going to understand it and accept it. Because I've felt that in my scenario, there's been some times where a scenario that is given to my children and they don't accept it and they don't understand it, then there's frustration on the other end of like, well, and it's like, well, they're just so little, like they can't possibly grasp that and understand that. But, and I don't know, maybe that's just, that adult is behaving in an unhealthy way, but I just think that's important for maybe parents to, or any of us on either end, the mom or the dad, to realize, like, to keep it simple. What a child is able to emotionally grasp and understand is quite, it has to be simple. They can't, all these nuanced reasons, like, they don't get that. It's just like their family's broken. That's all they know.
Well, and that's why I like to bring it back to with smaller kids, like your mom and I have forgotten how to be friends, right?
Yeah, that's
really
such a good way to
simple
put it.
instead of like the why and the how and kids can't go there. That's your why and the how. That's not important, right?
Yeah.
They, what that's communicating is maybe there was a lot of fighting and arguing and now we've realized we're not going to say that. We're going to say that we've forgotten how to be friends and we've decided that it's best this way. It's calmer this way. It'd be better for you this way. It would be a happier, healthier home. I'm not pro-divorce, but there are reasons why sometimes that happens. But it's really important that you don't bring your reasons into it, because your reasons actually have no bearing on why their family is scattered, right?
And they can't maybe understand it, right? Like,
well, they're too young to understand it, right?
Yeah.
And if you're teenagers, it's different. But again, they don't need all the details. You're only going to hurt them by the details, right? Kids do really need their moms and their dads, right? They really need, and at different ages, you see a real need for, the boy to really have that connection with their dad, and the girl to really have that connection with their mom, and that's why it's so important that it doesn't get like shared with everybody else, especially when it's so new that you're building that relationship. That it's not like, now I have to share it with a stranger, and I actually can't talk to my dad, and so
and I have to share my time and his attention with this new stranger.
So really important, right? And that can be very hard, very hard.
That would be. Do you feel like you have like a big part of your role as a child counselor is really just continually reminding the parents that the focus is on the child and what's best for the child, and not
sometimes I feel like a broken record. Yeah. But I know it's like a self-control issue, right? We're trying to, you're trying to think first before you react and share something you shouldn't. And sometimes in a moment of weakness, and but going back and apologizing type of thing. But it can often be the case where I'm trying to tell them that you really need to not have the parent talk. They do not need to hear that. Those are adult conversations about adult things, and they have nothing to do with the kids. And you are hurting your child and hurting your relationship and actually doing serious harm. And sometimes I've had to really have it in that, strong words to say, this damages your kids, right? And long term, this does severe damage to your kids.
Yeah, there's a song right now. It's kind of going viral on TikTok, but it talks about like 2 homes and 2 birthdays and 2 bedrooms and 2 whatever, and then it ends with a line that's something like, the best thing for mom and dad to do, split my world into 2. And I listen to it and you're like, whoa, like it breaks me, because yes, there are times where divorce is necessary, like abuse, and even affairs. Like there are times where if you choose to walk away after an affair, like even from like a biblical standpoint, like it's allowed. It's also okay to stay if there's repentance and all that on the other side from the spouse that like betrayed the marriage. But it's like it really does affect children, and it really does split their world into 2 because they're constantly divided.
Because if you were to stay and have continual affairs, what also are your kids learning from that?
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
But it's very hard, and there's no cookie cutter answer for any of it. And
and each situation is probably so
different.
So different. But it's really important that kids are not a part of your conflict. And you keep that away from them. And that means like not yelling at your spouse on the phone and your kids are in the next room. Or if you think they're in bed and they can't hear you. They can hear you and they pick up on all that. And it really does hurt them. Or even just the little comments about how, well, your mom would never do that, or your mom always did it that way, or whatever. Like the little comments are hurtful, and they hurt kids. They hurt kids. You want to treat that individual. It's very hard, but you want to give them the respect of being the other parent, and not talk negative and not bring out everything you know about them. And remember that is your child's mother or father, and always try and look at it through their eyes,
and to like protect that relationship that they have.
Yes, and I mean, we're talking about like
because rejection.
Yes,
if they like a parent leaving their life, that's long-term damage, and a lot of time in therapy too. To that comes up continual in their life. So it's all hard. It's all hard, and it is not the way that God intended, but sometimes necessary. But the kids hurt. If somebody said the kids were not phased through the divorce, that's a lie. That's a lie.
And it's residual, and it will go, like, we're talking a lot about like little kids mostly. I mean, but it will go on with them till they're teens, into their adults.
It'll come out in different stages, right?
Even if it was an amicable divorce, kids will always feel
this is different now, or it's a loss that affects at different stages, right? And kids are very much affected by that, and we have to really provide that environment where they feel safe to talk about however they're feeling, even if they think it doesn't make sense, right? That you just be the parent that sometimes it's hard when they'll say something great about the other parent, and you're thinking to yourself, you just want to say something, but then you want to think that makes your child feels good, and you are glad they feel that way,
absolutely,
instead of the opposite, right, in that moment, right? So through the child's lens is very difficult as an adult to actually think, but they are going to deal with it very differently than you. We know that with loss. It'll look different to your loss. It'll look like they're coping, and then it'll look like they're crashing, and then they're more adapt to putting it on the shelf and picking it up. If you
almost like compartmentalizing.
Often the case, and so I know they say that specifically with grief. It'll look like kids are doing fine, but they're just compartmentalizing.
Or it's coming out in different ways.
And maybe not to be scared if you're like, oh, my kid's doing fine, and then all of a sudden they're not fine, but to realize just ride through that, and then they might be fine again. Like you said, they might put it back on the shelf and then take it off, and it's not going to be this linear healing. There might be some ups and downs, and
throughout their life, like even approaching their first relationship, like or marriage, or different things where they have conflicting feelings that they have to work through because of what they saw or what they experienced. So there are challenges along the way, but giving them those tools will make them more resilient, right? And
helping them to
so they don't go after the same kind of relationship.
And to teach them to just like accept and talk about what's, I know, like one thing that I feel like you really taught the kids and would try to implement in the home is like, just to accept and to be able to talk about what's happening and how you feel. And I remember this one time a few years ago, and Cole was a little bit littler. He even more than I has struggles with when he sees dads who are the way he would want. He will often feel sad, and he'll make comments about it. And one time he'd come home from a friend's house and was like, so-and-so's dad does this with them and that with them and this. And he was crying. He's like, it's not fair. Like, I want a dad like that, and my dad doesn't do this and that. And I was just like, okay. And I had said to him, like, well, like some people have different capabilities. And there was like, you know, if you had a friend whose dad had injured his legs and he couldn't walk, and his dad was in a wheelchair, and then his son and his dad could do a lot of fun things with him, like go to the movies and play board games, but he couldn't play soccer with him because he doesn't have legs that worked. You know, it would be good for that son to appreciate what his dad could do and understand his dad's limitations. And if the dad's in a wheelchair, he can't play soccer, and that is sad for sure. And it would maybe be sad that he sees other kids' dads play soccer, but what can his dad do? And so then I said to him, like, you know, maybe emotionally, like your dad doesn't do these same things as your friend's dad, but like, let's talk about the things that your dad can do. And I said, you know, it's sort of like your dad's in an emotional wheelchair, but it's like trying to find ways to accept what's happening in the hurt, give grace to that other parent if you can, and help explain it without just being like, yeah, your dad's a horrible person, but just to help them to try to see like and you've done that before. Like I remember you had the kids like write lists of like things that they were sad and hurt about with their dad, but then things that they appreciated and good things that their dad did, and let's focus on like redirect them to positive things, because there, no matter what, there are positive things there, right? Like even if the list is short, it's something. Even if you can put one thing on a list, you know,
that's like right. There are positives to switch it. It's such a challenge for kids. And at different points of their life, those kinds of things will come up. But that's great that you as a parent were able to really explain that instead of bash the other parent, kind of give it a little bit of an explanation. But it's hard when they see other parents. And you can also talk about like the fact that things look perfect to kids on the surface.
So
like
true.
they look at their parents' home or situation and think,
this
like,
is so great.
why
They're so
don't
perfect.
I
Why don't I have this?
So
there is
true.
no perfect.
Except Pam's house. My kids come over here and they're like, Mom, why don't we have a snack drawer like Pam's house? She has a whole snack room downstairs, and they're like, oh, like, Mom, she's just like such a good mom. She's got all these like snack things and I'm like, okay, well, guys, we will get a snack drawer if that's what you want.
I'm just trying to bribe all the children
Make
to
it
be
hard for others to live up to.
Trouble.
That's right.
Whatever.
No house is perfect except for Pam's. It is
No,
perfect.
It's not perfect here, but that's like that when you're talking about like the mom guilt where you have to like overcompensate. I feel like I'm always trying to be like, I don't know. I'm so curious that when my kids are older, I just want them to be able to like acknowledge the hard thing, but I want them to feel like, but our mom didn't fall apart. Our home was nice. We could have our friends over. We
put that
good
mask.
snacks.
You put that mask on yourself.
Yes.
You did.
We're 100% going to do a little video of your snack room. Oh, we're gonna show everyone.
Oh, I'm just in
That
the
would
middle
be
of a
very
little
cool.
renovation of that snack room. Too,
Yeah.
so
Oh, you
I'll
did?
see. Yeah,
Oh,
I'll
I
tell
need to
you
come down
after,
and see.
'cause,
Oh, that's very
a little
cool.
something up, but I'm gonna do that.
Well, this has been amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing conversation.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's some people, viewers, that are watching or listening that are thinking, oh, I need my child in therapy. So I guess, are you accepting patients or clients? And if not, do you have anybody else? Can we like put a link on the bottom of our YouTube?
Yes, and I am, and we can put a link.
Awesome.
Absolutely, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I just thought of this now. Tracy did not mention this at all, but Tracy has written this incredible
I didn't even bring
workbook.
them.
I have some kind of extra
there's a
workbook in there. Tracy wrote this amazing kids
have-
workbook.
I wrote 4.
Wow.
They're incredible. It helps kids like identify their feelings and walk through it and regulate it. So they could use it if they already are in therapy with a different therapist. They could use it at home.
Perfect.
Maybe we don't know how to do this, I'm sure, but we're going to get our editor to put a link to your Amazon page if
That would
people
be
want
awesome.
to order that book. It's
I
so
totally
good.
forgot that. I was thinking that the other day that I should bring it to show.
I'm going to order
I
it.
love that book so much. Last year, I ordered a case for Cole's class and gave it to the teacher, but I thought I was nuts. She was probably like, can you butt out? But I was like, if
It's
you
gonna
give
be
one
so
of these
good.
books to each of the children, it's so amazing. She was like, okay, but then I let this go like, that might have been weird. Oh well.
No, but that's
it's
great.
awesome.
That's amazing.
So it came about because I wanted a tool to be able to send back and forth with kids that would help them. It's not
amazing.
what you do in therapy, it's what you take from therapy and apply, right?
Yeah.
And then I realized people were saying, well, what if my kid's not in therapy but wants these tools? So initially I had the faith-based, non-faith-based one to take back and forth to therapy. But then I came out with an improved, better one. Well, I shouldn't say better. It's just,
Wow, I'm
there's
excited.
more skills in it. And it's meant
Better order another case.
Self-regulation, like teaching kids about their brains, about their bodies, about how to calm down. Then journal section. And I wanted to set it up in a format where whether they're comfortable at drawing or writing.
Wow.
Because some are both and some are one or the other.
That's the thing. It's so beautifully done. The graphics are really great. The creativity, the activities, like it's not just a book. Like you've done such a good job with it.
Thank you. I
It's
appreciate
amazing.
that.
It's really
That's
good.
exciting.
Yeah.
So we will definitely put the link
Yes.
in the YouTube page and Amazon, and that way people can reach out to you if they're looking for a therapist for their child or even themselves.
Yes.
I guess, but
And I work in Niagara Falls.
Awesome.
So throughout Niagara, people are willing.
Ontario, Canada for all our US
Actually, I have
followers.
a lot of clients that are several online right now that are.
I was going to ask you that. Do you do Zoom or something if people...
I do.
Okay.
I do. I have it through my software, Jane. Yep.
awesome.
Exciting. We share Tracy with the world.
Yes. Well,
You're so sweet.
yeah, right? Oh, it's been exciting.
Yeah,
We
thank you
are
so much.
so thankful for you to be here again.
I am thankful that you asked me here. This was fun.
Good. We're glad. We're glad that we can, have some tough conversations, but really just come back to the positive and what life can look like with
You
the
don't
hard
have
work.
to do it alone. You can
You don't have to
get
do it
help for your
alone.
kids.
Yeah.
There's no
And
shame
I'm not
in
saying
it.
that therapy's it's not meant for life.
Yes.
But I do think it's healthy that people reach out at different points, touch points in their
Yeah.
life to help them. And that's what we're here for.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thanks.
Bye.